Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's your guy, Darren, the bow tie fragrance guy. We talk about two things on this channel, man. Looking good, smelling great. So, fragrance and fashion. So if that sounds like your thing, man, consider subscribing to the channel, man. Go ahead and click the subscribe button and make sure you click that little bell icon as well. So hopefully, and I say hopefully, YouTube may send you a notification, even if it's days later, that a video has been uploaded on the channel. So guys, on today's video, I'm going to be covering off on 10 inexpensive, cheap, well, however you want to say it, man. Cheap, inexpensive fragrances. They're synonymous to me. Fragrances that I have in my collection that are great, attention-grabbing fragrances to wear during the spring season. Now, I've already dropped my spring niche list as well as my spring designer list. I'm only going to be giving 10 today. Honestly, one partial reason is it takes a long time when you go through 15 fragrances. Number one. So I want to be a little bit more efficient with the list. So I'm only going to give 10 on today. We may come back and tackle this again at a later time. But 10 attention-grabbing fragrances that are inexpensive to wear for the spring season. Guys, I don't know if you can see today, I'm rocking a double-breasted suit today. This one is from Spirit McKay. Shirt is a custom shirt from Spirit McKay, and my accessories are from Tom Ford. So my tie and pocket square are both from Tom Ford. Fellas, don't be afraid to wear double-breasted suits. I mean, I know it's not as typical as the traditional single-breasted suit, but if you want to add a little bit of flair and stand out a little bit more, don't be afraid to rock something like a double-breasted suit. Again, this is a navy double-breasted suit from Spirit McKay, and I love to do that sometimes. Again, I want to change it up a little bit, have a little bit of variety in what I'm rocking. I like to go to a double-breasted suit for a little bit, for a little bit of change of pace. So that's my little style tip of the day. So guys, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the list. You know how we do. If you want to see what 10 fragrances are on the list today, you know the routine, man. Keep it locked right here. Let's get into it.
Bow tie fragrance guy.
All right, guys, we're back. Thank you so much for keeping it locked in. Let's go ahead and jump right into this list today. So the first fragrance up on the list, I champion this fragrance because for what you're going to pay for it, this is very, very well done. As a matter of fact, I like most of the fragrances from this house. This comes from the house of Sean John, and this is called 3 a.m. This is 3 a.m. And what I love about this one is there's this kind of gin and tonic vibe that you get with this fragrance. And it opens up with some nice bright citruses. Primarily I get this very succulent mandarin orange note in the opening. Plays really well with the lime and the bergamot in this one as well. So that lime kind of gives the impression almost of when you have a nice gin and tonic and you have that lime or the lemon sitting on the side of your glass or something like that. That's kind of the vision that this invokes for me smelling this fragrance. And when it dries down, there's this slightly warm leather accord when it dries down. And this one is really good for what you're going to pay. And this is the perfect kind of fragrance to wear in the springtime. So I hear a lot of people talk about this one highly, and I think with good reason. So check this one out from the house of Sean John. This is called 3 a.m. All right, guys, now the next fragrance up on the list, this one reminds me a little bit of Creed's Green Irish Tweed, which of course is probably the quintessential spring fragrance. But this one comes from the house of Lacoste, and this is called Lacoste Magnetic. And this is from the L1212 line. I've talked about this fragrance a few times on the channel. When I talk about it, I have spoken highly of this fragrance. It doesn't smell exactly like Green Irish Tweed, but it's gonna, again, put you in the ballpark. Some of the primary notes in this fragrance to my nose are gonna be bamboo, tea, and also vetiver. And when I talked about the same thing on my niche and designer spring list, vetiver, tea, two amazing notes in fragrances to me that really work in the springtime. For me, for spring, that tea note usually gives this kind of calming, relaxing vibe to a fragrance, and I love that in the springtime because it's starting to get really warm where I am located geographically, and then of course vetiver. Earthy, kind of green, depends on how it's used in fragrances. And this one, it comes across a little bit more from like a green than more so earthy, but it works in this composition perfectly. So check this one out from the house of Lacoste. This is from the L1212 line. Again, this is called Lacoste Magnetic. All right, guys, now the next fragrance on the list, this fragrance to me is criminally underrated. When you look at the list or host of perfumers that worked on this fragrance, it's no surprise to me that is good. But the fragrance that I'm talking about is from the house of Burberry, and this is called Burberry Rhythm. Now, there's an intense version of this fragrance as well, and that one is good as well, but this is just the Burberry Rhythm. And listen, it's classified as a leather fragrance, and you do get a little bit of leather, but that's not really the star player to me. It's the spices in this. Primarily, you're going to get some verbena and basil in this fragrance, and those are really the star players, as well as some cedarwood when it dries down as well. That really starts to kick in. But guys, this is such a well done fragrance at this price point. And again, those kind of spices, cardamom, basil, verbena, really comes together and makes this fragrance that gives just the perfect, I would say, wearing experience in the springtime. This is one, again, that you got to get your nose on, and it doesn't cost a lot of money, and that's what this list is about. But this is a very well done fragrance, very underrated in my opinion. So make sure you check this one out, guys, from the house of Burberry. This is Burberry Rhythm. All right, guys, the next fragrance on the list, this one comes from the house of Burberry. Yes, we have another Burberry fragrance on the list today, and this one is called Mr. Burberry Indigo. Mr. Burberry Indigo, is this anything that's going to knock your socks off? No, but for the springtime, if you want to save a little bit of coin, this is going to be a good fragrance to get. It's very inoffensive, and what I like about this one, when you think about the springtime, is two notes in here that really stand out to me. That is tea and mint. And like I said before, tea is one of those notes for me that just work in the springtime. And that mint tea combination in the middle of this fragrance is really where the magic is if you talk about wearing it in the spring. So check this one out, guys, from the house of Burberry. This is Mr. Burberry Indigo. All right, guys, now the next fragrance on the list today, this one comes from the house of Dunhill, and this is from the Icon Racing series, and this is Icon Racing Blue. Icon Racing Blue, and if you've tuned into any videos here on the platform of YouTube, you probably heard this is kind of the typical blue DNA. But there is a very unique kind of aquatic sea salty kind of vibe that runs through the heart of this fragrance. To me, that gives it a little bit more of a uniqueness than just the typical average blue fragrance that a lot of people like to compare this to, like your Dior Sauvages and your Dylan Blues. And that's primarily because this fragrance also has ambroxan in it. And of course, people like to make those references when it has ambroxan. Those are two of the main fragrances people talk about. But at the end of the day, again, for the price point that you're going to pay for this, which is about 35 bucks, this is a great one for the spring. So check it out from the Dunhill Icon Racing series. This is Icon Racing Blue. All right, guys, out of all the fragrances on the list, I would probably say, with the exception probably of the 3 a.m. maybe, this is just springtime in a bottle when you talk about a designer fragrance at this price point. And this is from the house of John Barbados, and this is Artisan Blue. Artisan Blue, and although this is listed as in the title it's a blue fragrance, this fragrance is very green, very herbal, very green. Spices and green spices. I think this is classified as an aromatic spicy fragrance. And again, that's really what this is. If you could really talk about or envision an inexpensive fragrance that's great to wear in the springtime, and you look at the notes in this: geranium, lavender, basil. It's all in here, man. It's all in this bottle right here. So just pick it up. It's usually you can find this for less than 30 bucks. It's great. It's a great springtime fragrance from the house of John Barbados. Again, this is called Artisan Blue. All right, guys, now the next fragrance on the list kind of came out of nowhere, and there's not really a lot of information on this fragrance, but it's from the house of Mont Blanc, and this is Individual Tonic. And because there's not really any notes that you can find listed on this fragrance, I sprayed it, and really, if you look at the bottle, that's telling of what's in this fragrance. Now you think about the original Mont Blanc Individual, doesn't have a whole lot to do with that one. This is a more green, kind of spicy fragrance, and I think there may be some lavender in here, which you find in a lot of fougères. But I think that's what it is, man. And again, it's not anything that's going to knock your socks off as well. But again, if we're talking about something that's inexpensive, this one can be had for around that $30 price point as well. And it smells really good, and it would be made for good use in the springtime when you smell this kind of composition because of this kind of green nature that accompanies it. Again, it's all in the bottle if you look at it, man. From the house of Mont Blanc, if you can find it, check this one out. This is called Mont Blanc Individuel Tonic. All right, guys, the next fragrance up on this list, this one comes from the house of Ferrari, and this one is called Bright Neroli. Bright Neroli. Now, to me, it seems Neroli seems to be a kind of polarizing note in this community, but I love it. Personally, I love the smell of Neroli. Most of the time when people smell Neroli, they make reference to Tom Ford's Neroli Portofino, which is probably one of the most recognizable fragrances that have the note of Neroli, and I love that fragrance ever since I put my nose on it. And this is kind of a less expensive kind of designer interpretation of that to some degree, if you will, the way that Neroli is used in here. But Neroli is a great note for me when using a lot of fragrances that work in the springtime. So this is one that I highly recommend. This is pretty good quality too for what you're going to pay for it from the house of Ferrari. So check this one out, guys. Again, this one is called Bright Neroli. All right, guys, now the next fragrance up on the list, this one is very close to my heart because this is one of my first signature scents. This is one of the fragrances that I bought multiple bottles of for as long as I can remember. And this one comes from the house of Bulgari, and this is just called Blue. And it says blue, but this is more of a powdery fragrance. It's very powdery. And really when I smell it, it smells like springtime to me. Like when flowers are starting to bloom and you walk outside and you can kind of smell the smell of spring. This reminds me of that time frame because this is when I used to rock the heck out of this fragrance, man. So it reminds me of the springtime. And I think that powderiness that you get from this is just works perfectly when the temperature is about in that, that 70, 75 to 80 degree range, man. This fragrance just shines. So one of my, little hidden gems, or one of my fragrances that I've always had and that I've always loved, is great for the springtime from the house of Bulgari. This is called Bulgari Blue. All right, guys, and last but not least, I'm not going to talk a lot about this one because a lot of people know about this one, and it's perfect, man. When it's hot outside, I like something that's just really uplifting, and that's what this is. This is from the house of Mont Blanc again, and this is called Legend Spirit. Bottom line, at the end of the day, man, this thing just smells good. This smells good. It smells fantastic, man. So get it in your life. I know most of you have heard of this. If you don't have it yet, it's springtime. I promise you that you get this one in your collection, you're going to get yourself a lot of positive attention, a lot of compliments. Honestly, to me, this reminds me a little bit of Popeye Eau Fraiche from Jean-Paul Gaultier. That's the kind of sort of vibe I get from it. Very, very fresh and uplifting fragrance, guys. So check this one out as well. Great for the springtime from the house of Mont Blanc because it's called Legend Spirit. All right, guys, that's it, man. That's my time. I hope you enjoyed the video today as I gave you 10 attention-grabbing fragrances to wear for the springtime. As always, I appreciate your time and your attention to these videos. You don't have to watch, but you do, and I sincerely appreciate it. And don't forget to make sure you take a few moments to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, and go ahead and share these videos out to some other folks that you think could use this information or find it entertaining. Because I'm your guy, Darren, the Bowtie Fragrance Guy. I love to look good, and of course, I love to smell amazing. So until next time, guys, keep looking good, keep smelling even better. I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.